Joined on the line by the chairman of the powerful Senate Intelligence Committee. That will be Tom Cotton of the great state of Arkansas. Welcome back, Senator. Great to talk to you.
Dwayne, it's great to be on with you. So much better than being on with Hugh.
Isn't it, though?
The only thing I can quibble with, I guess, is the powerful Senate Intelligence Committee. I'm not sure how powerful we are, but it also reminds me of an old joke from the Army about military intelligence being an inherent oxymoron.
Yes.
You'd have to say the same thing in spades about Senate intelligence.
Well, okay, fair enough, but you do run a pretty important committee. Look, as with the Trump administration, everything is rapid fire. I've got so many things I want to talk to you in such a limited amount of time. I'm going to talk to you about what's going on with Gaza and the end of the ceasefire there, where that goes in a minute. I want to talk to you about Ukraine and if the deal is dead or if the arm twisting of Zelensky continues. I want to talk to you about the Taiwanese investment in the United States, $100 billion on a new semiconductor plant and what that means. But I would be absolutely committing malpractice if I didn't refer to the New York Times guest essay by Dr. Ian Lipkin and Ralph Barrick. And I want to read you one paragraph from this story, because as soon as I read this, I went, oh, my gracious, it's a good thing I'm talking to Cotton today. The Wuhan Institute of Virology, where many of the researchers work or have worked, is at the center of the controversy regarding the origin of the COVID pandemic. We don't imply that they are responsible, nor do we have any certainty that this newly discovered virus has the potential to cause the next one. What worries us, though, is the insufficient safety precautions the researchers took when studying a brand new coronavirus in Wuhan. Tom Cotton, what is going on?
Dwayne, I'll confess that I'm not a frequent reader of the New York Times op-ed page, but I'm also not quite as, I think, guileless as Mr. Lipkin and Mr. Barrick about the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It's where the original pandemic almost certainly originated. And I do worry that it's still up and it's still operating, and who knows what kinds of research they're doing there and whether or not that research is up to safety standards, as they proved time and time again before 2020 that they were not up to safety standards. So anytime you hear news from these Wuhan labs, they're doing this kind of research and they're identifying new coronaviruses, I think you have to be very skeptical and somewhat concerned.
Of course, more on that later. But let's spin to what's going on in Ukraine. So, what was your impression after the debacle in the Oval Office on Friday, and what do your colleagues in the Senate feel about Zelensky now, maybe as to a time 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago? Has Zelensky is he starting to wear out his welcome?
Well, Dwayne, I think it's regrettable because everyone in the Oval Office wanted the same thing. They want to have a durable and lasting peace in Ukraine that stops the killing and prevents a third future invasion of Ukraine by Russia. I think most of what President Zelensky said was better left unsaid or said in private, not in front of the cameras. I would point out that Benjamin Netanyahu, for years, has gotten much worse treatment from first Barack Obama and second Joe Biden, and has actually had their administrations put concrete pressure on the government of Israel, such as withholding certain kinds of munitions, withholding bomb-clearing bulldozers, putting political pressure on Israel at the United Nations. Despite all that, Benjamin Netanyahu has always managed to maintain his relationship with the American president, whoever it may be, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and now President Trump again, and obtain for his country the support that they need. So hopefully we'll get things back on track, and President Zelensky can sign the deal that he was prepared to sign on Friday, and President Trump can go forward with our partners in Europe in trying to forge what we all hope will be a lasting peace that ensures quiet between Ukraine and Russia.
It's not only the best deal that's still out on the table, it's the only deal, right? I mean, there's really no practical alternative out there, is there?
I don't think so. Again, President Trump doesn't have a deal fully closed. I mean, it's going to take negotiations with Vladimir Putin.
Sure.
It's going to take negotiations with Vladimir Zelensky. But in the end, it's the only prospect for a peace. I think most serious observers, and I include myself in that group, don't see a way to end this war on the battlefield. It's gone on for too long. The forces are too entrenched. And Russia, though making gains, are making them in very, very modest incremental ways. And if a war is not going to end on the battlefield, Dwayne, with a decisive victory, the only other way for it to end is at the negotiating table.
Very quickly on the House budget that passed last week, very narrowly, that is now in front of the Senate. I know the Senate had passed kind of their own version of the budget. How much of the narrowest of the majority in the House is dictating what the Senate is going to do based upon what can actually get through the other chamber?
Well, Dwayne, we're very mindful that the House has an even smaller majority than the Senate does. Obviously, that's unusual since they've got more than 4 times the number of members. So we're working closely with Speaker Johnson and his team over in the House. We will, I expect, at some point soon take up their budget. Happy to consider that. Happy to include tax provisions along with what we passed in our budget, which is rebuilding our military, securing our border, unleashing American energy production. Now the House has passed that version as well with the tax measures. Obviously, there's some things in the House budget that we'll want to modify. I think the House budget provides for only 7 to 8 years of tax cuts for working families. We are very keen on making those permanent. I think
right.
Most House members agree. But we'll, I suspect, be taking up that budget in the weeks ahead, and that'll become the new blueprint for passing the legislation that ultimately does deliver on tax cuts for working families, a secure border, more affordable American energy production, and a much stronger military.
And then very quickly, as a closing question, how big of a deal is it that TSMC is investing $100 billion in the U.S. to make semiconductors here?
It's great news. I commend the president for it. Commend TSMC. They make cutting-edge semiconductors in Taiwan. I wrote in my new book, 7 Things You Can't Say About China, that That's one of the reasons Taiwan is so vital. We're never going to get all of that semiconductor manufacturing capacity off of Taiwan, but it's really critical for the American economy that we build redundant capacity here in America to suit our needs, to minimize the risk of a disruption if China decides to go for the jugular and invade or blockade Taiwan.
Go read that book, 7 Things You Can't Say About China, because it's all spelled out in there. Thank you very much, Tom Cotton. We will talk to you again next week. Thanks for all the time today. And good luck getting the men out of women's sports thing through the Senate today. We look forward to that vote as well.